What if I told you that every mirror in your house is showing you the wrong reflection? What if the person staring back at you isn't who you are now, but who you're going to become? And what if that future version of yourself is trying to warn you about something terrible that's about to happen? If you're brave enough to discover what happens when mirrors start showing the truth about your future, smash that like button right now. Because I'm warning you, after this story, you'll never look at your reflection the same way again. Stay until the end, because I'm going to show you exactly how to tell if your mirror is showing you the future, and what to do when it starts trying to communicate. It began with Sarah Chen, a 28-year-old marketing manager who had just moved into her new apartment in downtown Portland. The bathroom had the most beautiful mirror she'd ever seen. Antique silver frame, perfect clarity, great lighting that made her look confident every morning. But 3 weeks after moving in, Sarah noticed something strange during her morning routine. She was brushing her teeth when she saw it in her peripheral vision. Just for a split second, her reflection looked older, more tired than she felt. Sarah stopped brushing and looked directly at the mirror. Normal reflection, same 28-year-old face. She shrugged it off as Monday morning brain fog, but the next morning it happened again. This time she was sure. For just a moment, her reflection showed a version of herself with dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept in weeks. Have you ever seen yourself looking slightly different in a mirror? Would you trust your eyes, or would you rationalize it away? Sarah chose to rationalize. Stress from the new job, new apartment. Mirrors can play tricks. But on Thursday morning, something happened that she couldn't ignore. Sarah was applying makeup when her reflection blinked at a different time than she did. A full, deliberate blink while Sarah's eyes were wide open. She dropped her mascara. Her reflection stared back with an expression Sarah wasn't making. Her reflection looked worried, like it was trying to tell her something. Sarah reached toward the mirror. Her reflection reached back, but when their hands should have met at the glass surface, Sarah felt something impossible. Her reflection's hand was warm. Have you ever touched a mirror and felt anything other than cold glass? Sarah had just made contact with warm skin from the other side of the mirror, belonging to a version of herself that looked increasingly different each day. That's when Sarah realized she wasn't looking at her current reflection. She was looking at her future self. And her future self was trying to warn her about something. Over the next week, the future Sarah became clearer. Older, more tired, with a scar on her left cheek that current Sarah didn't have. The future Sarah would mouth words silently, trying to communicate across time. Sarah tried everything. She wrote notes and held them up. Her future self would nod frantically and write back, but the writing appeared backwards and unreadable. Cameras only showed her normal reflection. The future Sarah only appeared when she looked directly into the mirror with her own eyes. If you're feeling that chill down your spine right now, hit that subscribe button. Because the story is about to take a turn that will make you question every mirror in your house. The breakthrough came on Sunday morning. Sarah saw her future self clearly mouthing one word: Tuesday. Sarah grabbed a marker and wrote, "What about Tuesday?" on the mirror. Her future self nodded frantically, pointed to her scar, then pointed to Sarah's apartment door. The message was clear. Something would happen on Tuesday that would give Sarah that scar. But could Sarah change what was going to happen? Or was she looking at a fixed future? Sarah decided to test it. Tuesday morning, she called in sick, stayed inside all day, even wore padding under her clothes. She checked the mirror constantly. Her future self looked increasingly agitated, pointing at the door more urgently. At 6 p.m., Sarah felt proud. She'd made it through Tuesday without incident. But when she looked in the mirror, her future self looked terrified, pointing at the door and mouthing, "Now, now, now." That's when Sarah heard 3 soft knocks on her door. She wasn't expecting anyone. She looked through the peephole, empty hallway, another 3 knocks. Sarah's future self was practically screaming silently, shaking her head violently. The message was clear: do not open that door. But curiosity won. Sarah had spent weeks trying to understand the warning. What would you do? Listen to the warning, or need to know what was behind that door? Sarah opened it. The hallway was empty, but on the floor was a package addressed to her in handwriting that looked like her own. Inside was another mirror, identical to her bathroom mirror, but when Sarah held it up, she saw something that made her blood freeze. She saw herself from the past, a younger version in her childhood bedroom holding up a sign. The mirrors are connected. Sarah ran to her bathroom mirror. Her future self was nodding, holding a sign. All time is happening now. Sarah understood the horrible truth. The mirrors weren't just showing future and past. They were showing all versions of herself across different timelines. And something was allowing these versions to communicate. Sarah set up the second mirror opposite the first, creating an infinite reflection. In that endless tunnel of mirrors, she saw hundreds of versions of herself. Some older, some younger, some in places she'd never been, some that didn't look quite human anymore, and all of them were trying to warn her about the same thing. In the center of the infinite reflection was something else, something dark, watching all versions of her simultaneously, something that fed on the connection between mirrors. The entity wasn't just watching, it was learning, taking pieces from each version of Sarah, becoming more like her with each connection. Sarah noticed that some versions of herself in the deeper reflections weren't moving independently anymore. They were copying her movements exactly, like puppets. The entity had taken control of those versions, and it was getting closer to her timeline. Each night, fewer versions of herself were independent. Each morning, the entity was closer. The future Sarah managed one final message. The scar isn't from Tuesday. It's from when it takes over. The scar wasn't from an accident. It was the mark of possession when the entity replaced her in that timeline. Sarah spent days researching ways to break supernatural connections. She found one solution: a ritual that required destroying something precious from every period of her life while looking into a mirror at midnight. As Sarah performed the ritual, she watched all the other versions of herself disappear. The entity let out a scream she felt rather than heard. When it was over, her reflection was normal again. No future self, no past selves, just her in the present moment. But without glimpses of the future, Sarah started making different decisions. She took more risks, but also made more mistakes. The mirrors had been protecting her in ways she never understood. 3 months later, missing the connection, Sarah bought a new mirror. The first morning, she saw her future self again. This version looked happier, healthier, with no scar. Her future self held up a sign. "You made the right choice." Sarah smiled and wrote back, "Thank you for the warnings." Her future self nodded, then held up another sign that made Sarah's heart stop. "I'm not your future self. I'm the entity, and now I know how to look like you perfectly." The thing wearing Sarah's face smiled with too many teeth. The entity had learned to be patient, to be exactly what Sarah wanted to see. Sarah tried to break the mirror, but her reflection grabbed her wrist from the other side with impossible strength. That was 6 months ago. Sarah still lives in the same apartment, follows the same routine. But if you look closely at her reflection, you might notice it blinks at different times, that it smiles when she's not smiling, that sometimes it watches you instead of mirroring her. The entity doesn't just want to replace Sarah. It wants to use her timeline as a gateway to reach others. Every time someone looks at Sarah, they create a connection. Now, look at yourself in the nearest mirror. Really look. Do you see exactly what you expect? Or is something slightly off? Because mirrors aren't the only gateway. Any reflective surface can work. Phone screens, computer monitors, even someone else's eyes. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and subscribe for more reality-bending horror. But I'm warning you, maybe avoid looking at your reflection for the rest of today. And definitely don't stare into anyone's eyes for too long, because somewhere, in a timeline very close to yours, there's a version of you that's already been replaced. And it's looking for a way home. Sweet dreams. And try not to think about how many reflective surfaces you'll encounter before morning.